Just a week after the NBA gave us arguably the best game of the entire season, the top two teams were set to face off once again. The number one offense against the number one defense, with a record of 34-5 versus 33-6. However, this time, instead of a classic duel, we witnessed a complete blowout. It's interesting because you could argue that the already undermanned Thunder entered this game with an even weaker roster. If you recall, in the first matchup, Cleveland's offense had a field day, recording 67 points. In the second half, Cleveland finished with 129 points. We'll dive into the specifics of what worked in a moment, but for now, let's focus on their biggest advantage: size. Jared Allen arguably had his best game of the year, putting up a stat line of 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists, with 7 of those 11 rebounds coming on the offensive end. In nearly every crucial moment, the team dominated the glass, especially in the fourth quarter, when they had a single possession that lasted almost a minute and included 6 scoring opportunities. Alongside Allen, Evan Mobley also took advantage of mismatches on the glass, consistently capitalizing on his opportunities. Jared Allen made all the right decisions as a playmaker, putting up an impressive stat line of 21 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists. Without Chet Holmgren, OKC clearly lacked the size to handle 2 high-level bigs, and in this rematch, they would also be without Isaiah Hartenstein, making their front court depth scarce, to say the least. At the start of the game, it seemed like Cleveland would pick up right where they left off. Their offense opened with a lob from Darius Garland to Allen, which resulted in a foul. On that same possession, Garland received a handoff, attacked the defense, and dished it to Allen for a big-time finish. It looked as though Allen was set to replicate his dominant performance, controlling the paint throughout the early minutes of the game. In the first quarter, Jared Allen played 7.5 minutes, recording 6 points and 6 rebounds, on pace for a double-double in just one half of play. One thing you'll notice is that for both Allen and Evan Mobley, much of the offense comes from Cleveland's guards driving into the paint. When those guards get downhill, the defense has to rotate, but OKC doesn't have the size behind the play to effectively contest the bigs. Even more than dribble penetration, these opportunities are created out of pick-and-roll plays, where OKC looked completely helpless in their first matchup. Both Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are dual threats as shooters and drivers, so the Thunder had Isaiah Hartenstein jumping out to the ball to hedge against screens. However, as I mentioned, without that size behind the play, it became difficult for them to defend. The play that created automatic mismatches was the big-to-big passing between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. What makes this truly impossible to defend, though, is that if the defense is able to get the ball out of Darius Garland's hands and help comes over early to prevent the mismatch, it only takes one more quick pass to set up a dunk. OKC tried everything from switching matchups to mixing up coverages, but they had no answer whatsoever for Garland, Allen, and Mobley running the pick-and-roll. This meant that in the rematch, there were 2 things the Thunder absolutely had to focus on. First, they needed to prevent dribble penetration. If the defense isn't compromised, it's easier to keep a body on the bigs. Second, they needed to execute pick-and-roll defense, which they did nearly to perfection. Whenever one of OKC's bigs was involved in the action, they had them drop back more aggressively to defend. The automatic mismatches were created by the big-to-big passing between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. What makes this so difficult to defend is that if the defense manages to get the ball out of Darius Garland's hands and help comes over early to prevent the mismatch, it only takes one quick pass to set up a dunk. OKC tried everything from switching matchups to mixing up coverages, but they had no answer for Garland, Allen, and Mobley running the pick-and-roll. In the rematch, there were two key things the Thunder absolutely had to focus on. First, they needed to prevent dribble penetration. If the defense remains intact, it's easier to keep a body on the bigs. Second, they had to execute pick-and-roll defense, which they did nearly perfectly. Whenever one of OKC's bigs was involved in the action, they had them drop back more aggressively to defend. Cleveland's offense thrives on creating one-on-one advantages, and with so many capable wing defenders, it's incredibly difficult to break through. What makes Cleveland's offense so potent is how quickly they move the ball. Once that initial advantage is established, the ball flies around, hitting every pressure point with quick, timely decisions until they find the exact shot they want. If you can eliminate that part of the offense, you're already at a major advantage. With capable wing defenders able to pick up the ball at every position, dribble penetration becomes much harder to achieve. In the rare instance that one of OKC's wings got beat off the dribble, they executed a peel switch, with Cason Wallace picking up the ball while Jalen Bridges covered the corner. This kept attackers from getting deep into the paint. This was particularly evident when OKC opened the second quarter with their small ball lineup, allowing them to switch everything, regardless of who was screening or attacking, or any other wrinkles in the offense. The strategy was to ensure that at all times there were 5 players on the floor capable of cutting off drives. When paired with timely peel switching, the Thunder effectively had a body ready to step in front of the ball and protect the paint. Of course, the risk with these small lineups is that Cleveland's bigs create automatic mismatches. To counter that, the Thunder had the low man cheat over early whenever Mobley posted up, allowing them to send an immediate double team upon the catch. Mobley, being a quick decision-maker and a good passer, would usually find the open man in these situations, so OKC had to live with some open three-pointers. Fortunately, Cleveland's shooters weren't hitting, shooting just 6 of 20, 30%, from beyond the arc in the first half. Returning to the point about pushing Cleveland's bigs out further, if they did get the ball on the perimeter, OKC's wing defenders would relentlessly attack. The Thunder's defense relentlessly attacked the ball, hoping to force turnovers. This led the Cavs to try matching OKC's small lineup, but, as most teams discover, that strategy isn't the answer. That said, I have to give a big shout-out to Darius Garland, who seemed like the only Cavalier who showed up to play. OKC's goal was to force Cleveland into a lot of one-on-one situations, and Garland had no problem with that. He consistently got to his spots as an isolation scorer, putting up 15 points and 5 assists on 75% shooting in the first half. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Donovan Mitchell. He had a tough time breaking down OKC's defense. In the first game, he had to deal with Lou Dort chasing him all over the court. And in this one, he saw Dort, Cason Wallace, and even Alex Caruso, who was finally back from injury. Mitchell didn't have anywhere near the same success as Garland in isolation, struggling to create separation and missing his shots. He was just 2 of 12 from the field in the first half. With Mobley and Allen neutralized and Mitchell a non-factor, the Cavs really struggled to score. At halftime, the Thunder had posted just 49 points, but they were able to hold Cleveland to the same total. And that's one way to beat them. Another way is to score 75 of your own, which OKC did, and these two strategies actually overlapped. One of the primary ways they put up so many points was by turning defense into offense. In the first half alone, they forced an incredible 13 turnovers, converting those into 22 points. They lead the league this season with about 23 points off turnovers per game, so 22.5 points in the first half was almost unfathomable. In addition to converting defense into offense, their half-court approach was equally impressive. They ran some great sets to create open threes and driving lanes, and the execution was flawless, with their role players stepping up. The standout player was Lou Dort, who finished with 22 points on 8 of 11 shooting, including 6 of 9 from 3. Dort's big performances typically come when teams leave him open, and he punishes them with outside shots. But in this game, that wasn't entirely the case. Dort seemed to have an out-of-body experience, legitimately playing on the ball for stretches of the second quarter and creating his own shot. Just take a look at this play, where he uses his bag of moves to create space. In this game, OKC made some adjustments with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander compared to the previous matchup. In the first game, they had Shai hunt for Jared Allen on switches, aiming to pull him out of the paint and force him onto the ball, leaving the paint more vulnerable. Shai had his moments, but Cleveland was prepared for this tactic and did a good job covering their bases. So, in this game, the Thunder tweaked their approach. Instead of targeting Allen, they had one of their guards, or wings set a screen for the ball, getting a smaller defender switched on to Shai. Then he would attack one-on-one. For example, you'll see Shai get a switch onto Dean Wade, and the Cavs completely packed the paint. But it didn't matter. Shai could just rise over the top for a shot. Here's another instance. He gets Max Struss switched onto him, which gives him a significant size advantage. Shai takes him to the mid-post, uses a shoulder bump to create separation, and knocks down a jumper. He was deliberately avoiding contact with the bigs. Look at this play. OKC is setting a screen, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had Evan Mobley on him at one point, but he waved him off to isolate Max Struss instead. Like clockwork, Shai attacked downhill and finished with a tough bucket. When it was Jalen Williams' turn to run the offense, we saw the same approach. He used a screen from one of his wings to get the switch he wanted, then turned the corner to attack the space and drive to the basket. Cleveland ended up getting burned in isolation, as Jerome Robinson picked up Shai and fouled him, resulting in an and one. There were several possessions where Shai didn't even bother looking for a switch. He just attacked his own matchup and got whatever he wanted. At one point, it felt like the Cavs' defenders were taking turns getting cooked. Donovan Mitchell couldn't keep up. Then Isaac Okoro couldn't stick with Shai's sudden change of pace, allowing him to get to the rim. By the end of the half, the Cavs were done switching. They either fought through screens or went under, hoping to limit the isolation game. The same approach applied when Jalen Williams found himself with no one picking him up on a switch. He used that space to turn the corner and get to the paint for a pull-up jumper. The Cavs were completely unraveling, unsure whether to switch or not, and this miscommunication led to a Jalen Duren three-pointer, pushing the halftime score to 75-49. What's particularly interesting is that Cleveland's final weapon in the previous game was their 2-3 zone, which shut down OKC's offense in the fourth quarter as they built their lead. In this game, the Cavs tried to revert to it multiple times, but the Thunder were clearly prepared. They looked especially effective against the zone during the second quarter, when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was off the floor. The benefit of a EBE small ball lineup is that they can go 5 out, so instead of forcing the ball into the middle, they simply swung it around the perimeter, keeping the defense in constant rotation and eventually finding the shot they wanted. And remember when I said the role players came to play? Alex Caruso was one of those players. He made both of his three-point attempts against the zone and finished with 10 points. Not only did OKC go into halftime with an advantage, but they had completely figured out and neutralized Cleveland's strategy. By the time the third quarter was just a few minutes in, it was clear this game was over. Some of the starters stayed in to pad their stats and extend the lead, but ultimately, the second half was fairly uneventful. The final score was 134-114, with OKC getting their revenge and splitting the season series with Cleveland. I've already mentioned Lou Dort's 22 points, how they neutralized Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley. But the real standout was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who recorded 40 points and 8 assists on 65% shooting in just 3 quarters. He strengthened his MVP case, and the Thunder showed resilience as they tied the Cavs for the best record in the NBA. Oh, and they now have the second-best point differential of all time, only behind the 1996 Bulls. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you're first to see more content. If you're interested in my deeper research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. Links are in the description. Feel free to share your thoughts about the game in the comments below. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.